I'm Misty. I've chosen to do my pathophysiological presentation on tuberculosis. What is tuberculosis, or TB for short? How does it affect the body? How is TB transmitted? What are the symptoms of tuberculosis? And are there any treatments? If so, what are the treatments for tuberculosis? These are just a few of the questions that I will answer during my presentation. Most people tend to think of tuberculosis as a mostly eradicated disease, only affecting third world countries. And while TB does tend to affect those in a greater population, such as China or Russia, it is still prominent here in the United States as well, especially in our prison systems. Tuberculosis has been around for thousands of years, and while we have developed medications to help treat and or live with TB, it is far from eradicated. Tuberculosis is a disease that primarily affects the lungs and is also known as pulmonary disease. In affecting the lungs, this bacterium makes it difficult for the alveoli macrophages, which are thought to be our first line of defense, to eliminate this disease from the lungs. Moreover, scarring and or lesions of the parenchymal tissue of the lungs causes reticular spirometry due to the spongy tissue not being able to properly exchange gases with the alveoli. Singe et al. With Future Medicine states the bacterium possesses an unusual lipid-rich cell envelope that provides a hydrophobic impenetrable barrier against many environmental stressors and allows it to survive in extremely hostile environments. This basically means that our bodies are a rich breeding ground for tuberculosis, and that our natural systems may not be able to penetrate the barrier to fight tuberculosis. This has been the case in most instances, which is why people tend to die from tuberculosis. And unfortunately, with tuberculosis, this is a disease that is an all or nothing. You can have the ability to fight off the disease. You can fight to make it dormant in your body through medications and different types of approaches, or you just cannot fight it off at all, and ultimately you expire from it. This is the case with a lot of just different cases that are not caught in time. You have active TB, or what's also known as primary TB. And according to the National Library of Medicine, primary tuberculosis is when the bacterium or organism first infects the host and leading to manifestations. While primary TB is usually localized to the middle portion of the lungs, there's also other organ systems that are and can be affected by tuberculosis. The respiratory system, the GI tract, the lymphoarticular system, the skin, the muscular system, as well as the liver and even the reproductive systems. Dinah V. Peru with National Library of Medicine informs that the World Health Organization reported 10 million people were infected with TB in 2019, with a death rate of 1.4 million people that year. Tuberculosis is transmitted by infected droplets being spread from one person to another. This can be through sneezing, kissing, or even close proximity to infected individuals. Those already having a weakened immune system tend to be more susceptible to tuberculosis, to contracting it. That, for example, would be anybody with HIV, AIDS, or an immune deficiency disorder. That being said, tuberculosis does not necessarily discriminate against who it infects. Chopin, Keats, and Eleanor Roosevelt can attest to that, all of whom perished due to tuberculosis. Adinge and Singe with National Library of Medicine state that the symptoms of pulmonary tuberculosis include a chronic cough, weight loss, low-grade fever, sores, and night sweats. And secondary tuberculosis, which refers to the reactivated or the reinfected individuals, the cavities form in the upper portion of the lungs. The cavities and or lesions can be seen using x-rays, and this is generally the way that they will determine how far the disease has spread. While all of this information seems terrifying, management and or treatment does exist for tuberculosis. Depending on your infection, if it's classified as an active or latent infection, will depend on the course of treatment that is administered, be this more milder or in a more aggressive treatment. There are 4 groups of treatments for tuberculosis. categorizing them with group 1 being the more milder of the treatments, and group 4 being the more aggressive of the treatments. Group 1, or the first line of treatment, is oral medications such as Rifabutin. The second line of treatment, or group 2, are anti-tuberculosis drugs that are injectable, such as polypeptides. The third line of defense, or group 3, is a combination of both oral and injectable drugs, such as oxafloxacin. Group 4, which is your more aggressive drug, is terasidone. Currently, we do not have a proven effectiveness to completely cure tuberculosis. They do have what they consider a last resort drug, meaning you're at the end, this is your Hail Mary, and that is the Lysolide drug that is also administered. Experts believe that we will see an increase in tuberculosis cases, and that drastic measures must be taken to help combat MDR-TB, also known as multiple drug resistant tuberculosis, meaning that our vaccines just do not work on them. All with PubMed Central states, ultimately, it is not simply enough to understand where and how tuberculosis transmission occurs. We must intervene to intercept the transmission if we have a hope to have an impact on the incidence. We can currently combat TB in a good number of cases if caught in time in the early stages. However, more and more cases are being reported as MDR-TB, meaning our current course of treatment may become increasingly ineffective for treating tuberculosis. In closing, tuberculosis is a devastating bacterium affecting predominantly the parenchymal tissue and alveoli of the lungs. It is a wily disease, to be sure, not only having survived millennia in harsh environments, but also proving to be proficient at combating our most effective antibiotics in our modern day drug industry. To leave you with a quote from Jurassic Park, which I find very apt, he said, "These creatures were here before us, and if we're not careful, they're going to be hereafter." Thank you.